The city was saturated with the inevitable rhythm of modernity. Towering skyscrapers reached up to the sky, reflecting the sunlight, while the streets, crowded with people, seemed like endless streams. It was a world where cutting-edge technology was changing everything, where ideas became reality, but also a world where skeptics and enemies of innovation were never in short supply. Despite his achievements in business and technology, Elon Musk still faced challenges. In recent months, his companies had been embroiled in significant legal battles related to new developments in the space industry. These cases had become a tough trial for him, not only on a legal level, but also on a level of personal dignity. This time, it was his turn to face the court, where one of the biggest legal questions was about to determine the future not just for his companies, but for the entire space industry. Elon was prepared for this, although he couldn't predict how this trial would change his life. The court hearing took place in an elegant building that felt familiar to everyone, like a typical government structure with long corridors and marble staircases. Yet, every detail contributed to an atmosphere of heaviness, amplified by the cold sound of footsteps on the stone floor. Elon stood in the courtroom surrounded by his lawyers, but his face remained impassive. He knew this was just another part of the big game he had played many times before. Only this time, he might be facing something much more serious. The judge, a middle-aged man with neatly cropped graying hair, which added to his authority, sat at a table stacked with a large number of documents. He was known for his severity and decisiveness. It was well known that he held a somewhat contemptuous view of big tech companies, and even more so toward their leaders. Elon noticed the judge glance at him, and a faint expression appeared on the judge's face, as if saying, "Well, let's see if you can get out of this one." "Mr. Musk, don't you think your methods of breaking the law are actually quite ridiculous?" the judge began, not hiding his disdain. The courtroom filled with laughter. It was clear that this moment was not only meant to put Elon in an uncomfortable position, but also to remind him of his company's place in the legal world. However, Elon did not falter. He knew that reacting to disdain should not be aggressive or panicked. He approached his words with deep calm, ready to respond. "Perhaps it's funny to you, but for me, this is not just a business issue. I'm trying to create a world where technology serves people, not hinders them. If what I'm doing makes you laugh, then I must be on the right path," Elon said, his voice quiet but firm, immediately drawing the attention of everyone present. The judge sighed deeply, leaning back in his chair, and smiled mockingly. "We'll see if your ideas and innovations can withstand the critical eye of our legal system. I have serious doubts about that." Elon did not react to the mockery. He glanced at his lawyers, and then returned his gaze to the judge. "Criticize my ideas all you want, but you cannot deny that I am creating real change in the world. And even if you laugh today, you will see tomorrow that all this is not just empty words." These words hung in the air. The judge fell silent for a moment, and the entire room became quiet again. Elon maintained his composure and clarity, fully understanding that his demeanor could change the course of events. "Now listen to me. I'm not here to defend my reputation. I'm here to defend the future. And what you think is funny today could become an important part of tomorrow," he added, not looking at anyone specifically, but speaking in a way that made everyone in the room feel heard. These words left no one indifferent, neither the judge nor those present. Though the laughter in the room hadn't ceased, the mood had noticeably shifted. Elon knew this was only the first step in a long struggle, and he was ready to go the distance. The trial lasted several days, and Elon Musk became the object of constant attention from both journalists and his opponents in court. Every word, every glance, every movement of his hands was under intense scrutiny. However, despite all of this, he remained calm and composed, trying not to let emotions get the best of him. His mind was focused on one goal, to come out of this trial victorious, not only for himself, but also for his companies, for the people who believed in what he was doing. In the evenings, after the sessions were over, he would sit in his hotel room, reviewing documents, having discussions with his lawyers, trying to find opportunities for maneuvering. His strategy was simple: not to let his opponents catch him on unfounded arguments, not to give them any reason to doubt his integrity. One evening, after the session had ended, Elon received a message on his phone. It was from one of his closest employees. The subject of the message could not have been more striking. "We've learned that there is a traitor in the company. We have information that one of your closest people is attempting to pass important data to your opponents." It was a serious accusation. Elon immediately felt a weight in his chest, as if someone had stabbed him in the back. He had always believed in his team and maintained an atmosphere of openness and trust. Now, all of that was being called into question. He responded to the message: "Find out who it is. I want to know who is behind this." Despite all his determination, Elon couldn't shake the thought that even if this trial ended in his favor, this betrayal could become the kind of wound that would be hard to heal. Whoever it was, he had to restore trust within the company, with his employees. He had long understood that for his empire to grow, it needed not only innovation, but also true support from within. And it was in that moment that he began to realize how vital that support was. Meanwhile, in the courtroom, Elon's opponents showed no signs of yielding. Their lawyer, a middle-aged woman with impeccably prepared arguments, continued to attack his strategies, questioning every aspect of his business operations. She focused on vague moments in reports, on contradictions between Musk's statements and the actual actions of his companies. Her goal was simple: to create an atmosphere where any positive decision regarding Musk would seem doubtful. "Mr. Musk," she scanned the room, "you claim that your companies are working on developing new technologies for the benefit of humanity. But in reality, behind all this, there's a desire for quick profits and a number of environmental violations. How can you deny that your activities have more negative consequences than benefits for the planet?" Elon heard the words, but remained calm. He knew this was just another psychological maneuver. He could counterattack, but he chose a different path. "The technologies I'm developing," he began, "have the potential to change the world for the better. As for the environment, no technology will ever be 100% perfect, but it can be improved and adapted. What I'm doing today might seem difficult, but it has the potential to solve much bigger problems in the future." Her determination was not broken by these words, but they certainly shifted the balance in the room. Elon knew this was only the beginning of a great game, and to win, he had to act wisely and not rush. The next day, after another session, Elon returned to his hotel, once again looking out for potential traps. His employees had already informed him that the traitor had been found. It was one of his former managers who had left the company years ago due to disagreements over the development strategy. Now he worked for one of Elon's main competitors. Elon felt disappointed, but at the same time, he understood that in this situation, he needed to act carefully. This was his fight not only in court, but at the very heart of his business. Now he would return to the battlefield, where every step he took could be decisive. "We need to act," he told his lawyers. "We must always be ready for any surprise, because even those you trust can become your greatest enemies." Elon sat at his desk in the hotel room, carefully studying the new documents. His mind was tangled with thoughts on how to react to what had happened. His company had always been known for staying at the forefront of technological innovation, but now, more than ever, he realized how important the people he worked with were. This was not just a case about money or reputation. It was a battle for trust. He knew that this traitor was only a part of a larger game, with much more powerful forces involved. Elon had faced devious competitors many times before, but now he understood that the situation was different. Someone from his own team was working against him. This wasn't just a conspiracy. It was the feeling that he no longer had control over the situation as he once had. But he had no intention of losing. "You won't stop until you go all the way," he muttered to himself. "I always go all the way." Elon decided to hold a meeting with his team to discuss the next steps. He contacted his closest partners and subordinates, inviting them to the hotel's conference room. It was important. Now he had to show that he wasn't just a leader, but someone always ready to act in difficult situations. Once everyone was gathered, Elon began the conversation. "I found out who betrayed our team, but I won't engage in revenge or attempt to create more problems. We need to focus on what matters, our goal. Our task now is not to let this affect our strategy. If we allow this to take over, we will lose not just in court, but in business as well." The team remained silent, but each person felt the weight of the moment. Elon trusted them again, without compromise, without regret. His gaze was firm and resolute. "We move forward. Tomorrow we meet in court, and I want you to know, I won't back down. Everything happening right now is just part of a bigger game. My goal is to win and preserve our empire," he continued. The next day in court, the atmosphere was tense. Elon Musk walked to the tribunal feeling that it was now or never. The courtroom was packed, with journalists ready to cover every move, and even though his opponents launched numerous attacks, Elon showed no signs of anxiety. But this time, the judges seemed more interested in the details than just the testimony. Their questions grew more specific, trying to find flaws in every piece of evidence presented. Elon understood that this wasn't just a technical trial, it was a battle for his future. His opponents, presenting additional testimonies and documents related to the ecological and safety issues of his companies, were clearly trying to undermine his morality and the stability of his business. They questioned whether his innovations could truly benefit humanity, or if they were just a nightmare for the environment. But Elon remained calm. "We must embrace technologies that can change the world, even if these changes require time and patience. We cannot afford to stand still when we have a chance to make the world a better place," he stated. These words shifted the balance in the courtroom, and although his opponents didn't back down, Elon realized that the biggest battle was still ahead. He needed not only to win the trial, but also to restore his empire from within. After a grueling day, when the court session ended, Elon returned to his hotel, exhausted but believing in victory. His thoughts once again focused on his team. He respected them more than ever before. Now he clearly understood that the true strength of his business wasn't in technology or innovations, but in the people who stood behind those ideas. He opened a new message on his phone. It was a brief text from one of his closest partners. "We're on the right track. Everything will be fine. You're not alone." These words became the final push for him to leave all doubts behind. He knew that, even if it would be hard, he would win. And not only in court, but in the very fight for his empire. Elon woke up early in the morning, feeling a sharp tension that didn't leave him even in his sleep. Something important was supposed to happen today. The court case was approaching its climax, and he couldn't afford any mistakes. His company was on the brink of a major victory or defeat. But deep down, he felt that he could still change his fate, even if he had to face the greatest challenges. That morning, he received another message from the same team that had been with him from the very beginning. The message was brief, but it carried something more than just words of support. "Stay strong. We're doing this together." These few words gave Elon renewed faith. He realized that he wasn't alone in this fight. Now he had to protect not only his reputation, but also the people who believed in him. On the way to the courthouse, Elon took a brief pause in his car. He gazed out the window, trying to find some clarity in his thoughts. Under his leadership, there were not only technologies, but the fates of thousands of people. Every step he took mattered. And even if he won today, it didn't mean that victory had been achieved. This was only one stage of a larger game. Arriving at the courthouse, Elon immediately felt a shift in the atmosphere. Everyone seemed more serious, even more cautious. He walked through the corridors where discussions were taking place, where every step looked like part of a plan. His lawyers, in turn, looked confident. They were ready for the fight. This time, there were more journalists in the courtroom, their interest at its peak. Everyone was waiting for new arguments and even a possible sensation. With every step, the atmosphere grew tenser. But Elon knew that surrender was not an option. He held his head high as his lawyers presented new evidence. "Your Honor," he began, "I'm not here to apologize. I've always said that technology should serve people, and we're trying to make that happen. If this trial continues, it will only mean one thing: we all lose. We lose not only in business, but in the fight for the future." He set a simple goal for himself: to see this through to the end, no matter the opposition. After the court session ended, Elon remained deep in thought. The case was far from over, but his lawyers were confident about a victory. It had been a difficult path, but Elon sensed that the biggest challenges were still ahead. Meanwhile, his main goal, to stabilize the company and restore trust, began to yield the first results. Thanks to the relentless work of his team and new initiatives, the number of investments started to grow, despite him having to deal with multiple crises. Elon held numerous meetings to ensure that all departments were running smoothly. He decided to meet with key partners to discuss the strategy for the future. However, he had one important question on his mind: who was behind this conspiracy? All the evidence pointed to his closest circle. After weeks of investigation and evidence gathering, he uncovered the horrifying truth: the traitor was not just a partner, but an old friend. He had betrayed him, using the company's resources to create a competing product, trying to destroy Musk's reputation. Now Elon felt real pain. He couldn't believe that someone he had trusted could do such a thing. He felt the pressure on his shoulders growing heavier. But he knew he couldn't afford to break. The fight was just beginning. The following week, Elon gathered all his closest partners at his office building. They sat in the room, looking at each other, each waiting for what Elon would say next. His words were clear and brief. "We've decided this. I know who betrayed us, and I won't allow anyone to threaten our team anymore. My next step is to act decisively. We must act together, and now I'm gathering all the necessary resources to stop him once and for all. No one can stand in our way." He left the room, knowing that the next step would be the hardest. But he was ready. This was his battle, and he wasn't going to lose. Elon spent the next few days in the cozy yet dim room of his office, reviewing documents, jotting down ideas, and mapping out paths that would lead to victory. With each passing day, he felt more and more that his struggle was taking on not just a personal, but a global scale. It was more than just a lawsuit or a conflict with one of his partners. This was a new front in the war for the future. In the morning, sitting at the large table, Elon went over every detail of the case. He needed to piece the entire puzzle together. He knew he couldn't rely solely on what others expected of him. This was his responsibility, and he had to stay one step ahead, even if it meant facing off against those closest to him. The next day, his former friend, who turned out to be the traitor, tried to approach him. Elon felt his heart beat faster, but he didn't show it. This was his advantage. He approached the meeting like a tactical maneuver. "You know what's going on," the traitor said as he walked into the office. Elon, without lifting his eyes from his documents, calmly replied, "I know. You're trying to destroy everything we've built, but there will be consequences." The trader glanced at him curiously for a moment, but then shrugged. He didn't understand why Elon remained so calm. "You still think you can win this game?" he asked, sneering. Elon looked up, and his eyes hardened like steel. "I've already won," he quietly answered. "You can't understand that this is just the beginning. And we will still stand on our feet, even if you and your games turn out to be empty." The trader wanted to say more, but Elon stopped him with a look. He felt that this moment was crucial. Now they were on different paths, and there was no turning back. A few days later, Elon received new data that confirmed his suspicions. He was able to prove that the trader had attempted to use compromising materials for blackmail in order to seize control of his business. Elon gathered his team, and together they planned the steps to neutralize the threat. He knew this wasn't just a fight for justice. It was a war for his ideals and everything he believed in. Soon, Elon and his lawyers had gathered all the necessary evidence to convince the court that the trader had not only violated agreements, but had also committed serious crimes. Elon was ready to expose his enemy and bring him to justice to prove he was right. Each day brought him closer to the climax. Elon, feeling his heart tremble with tension, became even more focused and determined. He saw this as a trial he had to endure in order to reach a new level. The following week, the final round of the trial began. The parties presented their evidence, and every move Elon made became more decisive. The judge followed his every word carefully. This was his last chance to prove his case. The trader looked nervous, and his words no longer sounded as confident as before. Elon seized this moment to ruthlessly dismantle his defense. The case crumbled, and the trader's position began to falter. When it became clear that the trader had no chance of winning, Elon stepped forward and delivered his final statement. "I didn't do this just for myself, but for everyone who believes in us. We weren't just fighting for victory. We were fighting for our team, for our principles, and to show that each of us has the right to stand firm. This is not the end. This is only the beginning." Elon paused to see the reaction in the room. People around him began to applaud. This was his triumph, and he knew that this day would mark a turning point in his life. After winning the trial, Elon felt an incredible sense of relief. He could feel the tension that had held him for the past few months finally dissipate. However, the feeling of victory didn't bring the peace he had hoped for. His struggle with his own principles, internal fears, and the reality of the corporate world was far from over. 2 weeks after the trial, Elon stood in his office, his gaze directed out the window as various thoughts swirled in his mind. He had won, but what's next? What would his next step be? Was he ready to continue his journey in a world that, while his creation, was beginning to push him further away? Each day brought new tasks, new challenges. Elon had been able to strengthen his company's position, but more and more, he realized he needed to change his perspective on what he had once devoted every minute of his time to. It was at this moment that he decided to take an important step, to open a new chapter in his life. He left the main office and once again immersed himself in his work. But this time, his approach was different. He no longer wanted to be just a part of this endless race for money and power. His new goal was to create something that mattered, something that had an impact on people and the world as a whole. He began working on projects that involved not only business, but also social initiatives. He understood that only by creating something bigger than just commercial success could he find true fulfillment, and a sense that not everything in life is measured by the numbers in bank accounts. The trader, who had once tried to destroy everything, was now a shadow in his past. Elon no longer wished to waste time on those who weren't ready to understand his values. His focus now was on the people he could help and support, and the changes he could initiate. His first steps toward change were not easy. In a world where success is measured not only by achievements, but also by the people you can uplift, there were many obstacles. But Elon didn't stop. He knew it would be difficult, but in his heart, he felt a sense of determination. He felt that he had managed to find a balance between work and personal life, between profit and meaning. And that was his greatest achievement. A few months later, Elon met with his team to plan new projects. This time, he set goals for them that went beyond purely business pursuits. They had to help local communities improve conditions for those in need and create products that could change people's lifestyles for the better. Elon, who had once only sought victory in business, now understood that true victory wasn't what you earn for yourself, but what you leave behind. He decided that it was time to give part of his success to those who needed it. Elon's story, which had begun with the struggle to find his place in the world, had now become a story of recovery, shifting priorities, and the path to true victory, one that lies in inspiring others and leaving behind something greater than just a name. Elon stood on the shore, watching the waves crash against the rocks. The time that had passed since the trial was a true crossroads for him. He had changed his priorities, beginning to understand that true value wasn't in how much money or power you accumulate, but in how many people you can help improve. Everything he had achieved in business now seemed less important compared to what he could do for the world. At that moment, one of his old partners approached him. "Elon, you've changed," he said. "You're no longer that ambitious guy we once knew." Elon smiled. "I guess I've found something more important than all that money and success. Now I know what really matters. Maybe you'll understand that one day too." The partner just shrugged, not understanding, but Elon no longer felt the need to explain. They were going their separate ways, and that was okay. Since then, he began actively investing in projects that helped people. He created several initiatives focused on improving education in underserved areas, supporting the environment, and developing innovative startups aimed at social issues. A few years later, his company had not only become one of the largest in the industry, but also one of the most respected for its contribution to the welfare of society. Elon was no longer just a businessman. He had become a symbol of change for those who believed that success isn't just about money, but also about making the world a better place. And even when he looked at old photos from the time when everything began, Elon understood that every step was necessary. Every fall and rise was part of the journey that led him to true victory.